months, and she doesn't need the end of electricity to feel the pressure. The pressure is on the civilians' side. That is, from the moment there is less electricity in the Gaza Strip, on Israel's side, it is hoped that this will encourage Hamas to shift its positions. For the moment, no reaction from the Hamas side. The reaction is more from the Houthi rebels in Yemen, who have declared that the red line has been crossed and we should expect surprises. The translation, rocket fire, is that the case? Missiles, sorry. Is that going to be the case or not?
The Hebrew channel indicated that the Ansar Allah Houthis announced that the red line has been crossed, warning of an upcoming surprise. The channel wondered whether the response would be the launch of hypersonic missiles or another escalation. The coming hours will reveal the nature of the developments. Additionally, Hebrew media reported that the Hebrew army is preparing for the possibility of resuming missile and drone attacks from Yemen, raising the alert level and deploying defensive systems, including an interception system. Heads Cruiser. In another context, the American embassy in Yemen published a picture of the head of the Supreme Political Council affiliated with the Houthi movement, Mahdi al-Mashat. Commenting on the picture, saying that the United States does not impose sanctions without evidence. From the hot developments in the Red Sea, the developments take us to the continent. Yes, the NBC channel has published a new scandal involving the Yemeni Presidential Council under the government of Aden led by Al-Alimi. Media sources revealed that members of the Yemeni Presidential Council left the Egyptian capital Cairo after participating in a summit on the sector without settling the bill for their accommodation at the hosting hotel. So, let's watch the source.
Egyptian reports have revealed a controversial incident related to the stay of the Yemeni Presidential Council delegation in one of Cairo's hotels during the recent Arab summit, where the hotel filed an official complaint after the delegation left without settling the due bill. Members of the Yemeni Presidential Council stayed in the hotel for a week, coinciding with the convening of the emergency Arab summit hosted by Cairo. According to the hotel management, the delegation left after the summit ended without settling their dues, prompting the management to resort to legal actions. Until now, there has been no official comment from the Yemeni side. This issue remains under review, awaiting any official response from the Yemeni Presidential Council or the Yemeni embassy in Cairo, while the hotel insists on its legal rights to reclaim its dues. As for the internal Yemeni conflict, an unidentified warplane was observed flying over Aden and Abyan in southern Yemen amid the absence of official explanations, raising questions about the violation of air sovereignty. From the Yemeni front, developments take us to the latest updates on
the Palestinian arena, where Fox News reported that Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, stressed the need to set deadlines for the release of detainees, considering that their detention in the sector is unacceptable. Calling for the Palestinian movement to surrender, disarm and leave the sector. This, and he praised Qatar's role in the middle, describing it as important in the peace process. In a related context, the Hebrew Channel 12 carried out an analysis. The Hebrew political level issued instructions to the army to prepare for a potential war on the sector, in a serious indicator reflecting the Hebrew government's intention to resume the war on the sector within days. For its part, the Palestinian movement stated that the Hebrew side did not adhere to the scheduled withdrawal on the 50th day, according to ceasefire. The movement considered the Hebrew actions a blatant violation and an attempt to undermine the agreement. Additionally, the former head of the operations division in the Hebrew army, Israel Z. Tel Aviv no longer controls the course of negotiations with the Palestinian movement after the start of direct talks between the movement and Washington, which has deprived Tel Aviv of its ability to determine the outcomes of the war on the sector. For his part, the American Secretary of State revealed that the envoy for detainees, Adam Baylor, made direct contact with one of the officials responsible for the detainees held by the Palestinian movement, but the attempt did not achieve any notable progress. Meanwhile, the Hebrew Broadcasting Authority reported that the Hebrew delegation that arrived in Doha did not respond, granting a mandate to negotiate ending the war in the sector, but rather his role was limited to discussing extending the ceasefire. The Houthis have their fingers on the trigger and announced the end of the deadline. Tel Aviv anxiously awaits 0 hour, a major scandal for the Yemeni delegation of the Aden government in Egypt. And the Saudi forces are preparing for a major security event. Tel Aviv gives the blow, the green to resume the war in the sector. The Palestinian movement holds the Hebrews responsible for breaching the agreement. Iran, we will not negotiate under threat. Syria announces the end of the military operation and signs a historic agreement. Turkey and Russia enter the line of the Syrian crisis. Tel Aviv attacks new sites in Syria and annexes new lands. Zelensky formally apologizes to Trump and arrives in Saudi Arabia in an attempt to improve relations once again. And Britain fears being marginalized globally due to the American-Russian rapprochement. The deadline ends. 4 days, just a 2-word phrase said by the Houthi leader, for Tel Aviv to start preparing for to weave the threads of negotiation, where Richards published a statement for the leader of the Ansar Allah movement, the Houthis, confirming by saying, the Yemeni forces are still adhering to the specified deadline for allowing aid into the sector. He emphasized his full readiness to carry out the military operations he promised. In the same context, the Houthis' military wing announced that military measures would be implemented immediately after the deadline if aid is not allowed to enter. Aid to the sector, according to the statement from the Ministry of Defense of the Sana'a government. Meanwhile, Hebrew media reported that the deadline announced by the Houthis is receiving widespread attention, with everyone in Tel Aviv eagerly awaiting its end and considering it very seriously, as expressed by the Hebrew media.
Houthis last weekend, according to which if Israel does not resume the supply of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip within 2 days, meaning in the coming days, then the Houthis will resume their activity on the daily stage. It is important to emphasize, Tali, not the direct launches from Yemeni territory to Israel, UAV with the South, missiles, but the attacks against cargo ships connected to Israel, mainly in the Red Sea. The resumption of direct fire from Yemen to Israel is being reserved by the Houthis for a situation where fighting between Hamas and Israel in the Gaza Strip resumes. And a source close to the leadership in South Yemen, which opposes the Houthi, tells me this evening the following. We are very concerned that in recent days the Trump administration officially returned the Houthis to the list of terrorist organizations, contrary to the previous administration, the Biden administration. Therefore, if the Houthis, if and when they resume activities, we expect a significant response, much more than what we saw from the Biden administration. We, Tali, will have to wait and see what really happens with this.
According to sources, the Houthis might target ships linked to Tel Aviv in the Red Sea, in addition to resuming direct targeting of Tel Aviv. In the event that aid is not delivered to the sector before the end of the specified deadline. Meanwhile, the Hebrew channel I-24 News reported that Tel Aviv is exerting pressures on the Palestinian movement in hopes it will change its stance, but it fears a potential reaction from Yemen.
What explains this decision that seems sudden?
No, it was a decision that had been in the pipeline for several days. Until now, it wasn't effective. And visibly, Israel wants to increase the pressure on Hamas to ensure that negotiations and steps can be accelerated in order to obtain the release of the hostages, to more precisely sign a process, whether it is a phase 1B or a phase 2, whatever, as long as Israel obtains the start of negotiations. That said, and I contradict myself by saying that finally, Hamas has not halting the sale of electricity has virtually no impact on Hamas itself. Hamas has been stealing gasoline since